Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, witnesses, for being here. You know, I live in South Texas and obviously have been to the border a number of times, and I remember day one under the Biden administration where literally a wall was being built to protect our borders and was taken down. The border assets being a force multiplier for our Customs and Border Protection. There had been lights that were put up that literally they would not plug in under the Biden administration. We sat here in this committee and Mayorkas came here and told us time after time after time that we had to have legislative action to stop the massive onslaught that was coming into our country. Yet under President Trump, that was resolved pretty quickly. Now, we saw some work to do in Congress to close the loopholes that the Biden administration took advantage of. But what happened under the Biden administration, he turned what was supposed to be protection into processing. And, you know, all this massive, I call it immigration, except it wasn't immigration. Immigration's when you come here properly and legally. People coming across our border illegally. The open border policies are always under altruistic reasons, supposedly, you know, humanitarian efforts. Meanwhile, they turned a blind eye to the 300,000 children that were lost. I was down there and, you know, the cartels were renting a kid out, basically, from families to send them with false claims of being a family unit and the like. It was atrocious. Mr. Newman, I believe you're from Los Angeles. Is that correct? Or your organization is, anyway? You live in that area?
Yes, sir.
Homelessness is a massive problem there. Is that correct?
It's a heartbreaking problem in Los Angeles.
It is. How many homeless people have you invited into your home to live with you?
You know, honestly, I have actually invited homeless people
Yeah.
while I was in law school. I mean, a couple.
No, with you and your family. You mentioned you have a son.
I started out working and helped.
Do you have any homeless people living with you?
I helped open a day
Do you have
labor center in Denver,
homeless people
Colorado.
living with you? Do you
I
have any homeless
serviced
people living with you?
Excuse me?
Do you have any homeless people living with you from Los Angeles right now? It's a major problem. Have you let them into your home?
I do not have any homeless people currently living with me.
And I imagine that's in part to protect your family. The reason we have these laws is to make sure that we're protecting our communities. You know, half the world's population live under $10 a day, and it's a misguided notion, and actually an arrogant notion to say that we solve that problem by inviting everybody into the United States. We want people to prosper everywhere, and we should have partnerships with countries, you know, that hopefully allow them to flourish. But the idea that we're supposed to bring everybody here is a false notion. One of the things that was a real tragedy in this that kind of got overlooked is the massive, it was a new industry of bringing people into this country. Now, the messaging we see often from the left is like this was some organic movement of people coming to be free. The asylum claims were, you know, way blown out of proportion. They were really coming here for basically economic benefit as opposed to what true asylum is supposed to be for. But in the meantime, we saw this massive NGO organization basically funneling taxpayer dollars into these organizations. Now we see it on the other hand where not only the migration coming here is not organic, it's funded through NGOs, but we're seeing the protests are doing the same. Mr. Krikorian, could you speak to the NGO industrial complex that was stood up surrounding immigration?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's huge, and it is partly, in fact, funded by the federal government, and in a variety of ways. See, one thing that people obviously focus on is the NGOs in the United States that were flying people under Biden around the country. But there are U.S. taxpayer-funded groups outside the United States, sometimes through the UN or funded through the UN or funded directly, that were moving people, giving people, debit cards in order to facilitate their movement toward the U.S. border. So the taxpayer under President Biden was funding NGOs abroad to move people to the border, and then NGOs inside the country to move people around the country.
So in a sense, we're forcing taxpayers to pay for the demise of their own country and the communities. And
you could put it that way, yes.
Now, has this stopped completely, or is this still?
Well, it hasn't stopped completely, as far as I know, but most of the flow obviously is stopped because of the president's policy.
Are these organizations still at work or lying dormant, or?
I don't know, that's a good question. I assume they're lying dormant, eagerly waiting, like many of the illegal immigrants have said to reporters, waiting for the next administration and hoping that they will let them in.
Right, and as I mentioned at the beginning, we still have a lot of loopholes to close to make sure this doesn't happen. Thank you, Chairman, I yield back.